First of all, what drew you to Sunderland 50 some odd years ago?
We lived in Pittsfield at the time, and I was working over here with the phone company in the area, and my wife was interested in an older house. And the older houses in the Berkshires were in Lenox and Stockbridge, and they were wealthy people that owned these houses. So when I came to work here, I started to look around and ask people if they knew of any houses that might be for sale. And I asked a woman that I had the end of the main street in Hatfield. I said, I'd like this house because it's something I'm looking forward to having. So she says, well, I'm not interested in this salt box, but I know there's a salt box for sale in Sunderland, and it's been for sale for quite a while. So I says, well, I think that I will probably ask a realtor in Sunderland where it is. So I did, and he told me where it was, and I came up to take just a glance at it. So I told Alice, yes, I found one, but I'm not too interested in it. It's an old one, and the back end is falling off, and I said, I'm not too interested. It'd be an awful lot of work for me to restore it. So she said, well, I'm going to come over and take a look at it anyhow. And that was the end of the story. She came in, took a look at it, and says, yeah, I want to buy it. It was around, I think it was around 18. I got a $2,000 discount because I told Alice I'm not going to pay that much for it. And Skibitsky says, no, they want that the firm price. I said, well, that's good. I won't have to. So I offered them the price, and they accepted it. The shape of the house to start off with, the salt box type of house, with the main part of the house they extended it out as an addition, and that was a configuration that my wife really liked. But of course the L off it, that was all rotted off and all that. And I says, I don't think that I want to spend the time and energy to restore this house. But then they accepted my offer, and I said, what the hell am I getting myself into? But I thought of those kids, they made no exclamation or remark to me about it.
So when we moved from Pittsfield over to Sunderland, I was only 7 years old, so I don't remember it being a big transition. It was, I was young enough, but it was an adventure because there was one project after another. And my best friend, I made a best friend when I was 7 years old, and we're still really close. She lived right down the street, so it was positive for me.
Well, we moved in the summertime, and where we lived in Pittsfield, there were kids all over the neighborhood, so there was always people to play with. And we moved here, there was nobody around. I was 11, I guess. Yep, I was 11. And it's like, oh, this is going to be really bad with no kids around. And then once I got to school, we found out that everybody worked on the farm. That's why there were no kids around in the summer. So I remember coming back and saying, hey, I'm working next summer. And they're like, you can't do that. You can't work until you're 16, because that's what it was like in the city. I was like, oh no. So at 12 years old, we started working on the farm.
Which were close to the snows we were getting in the Berkshires, and there was a lot of snow. And when I moved here, I said, well, we're going to have less snow and less cold when we moved down here. But I found out back 50 years ago there was heavy snows here too.
Well, there were radiators, so we had heat upstairs in our bedrooms. It wasn't until Dad decided that radiators didn't belong in a 1700 house, so they took the radiators out and never put any heat in the upstairs. So the first year was fine, I guess, but once they redid the heating system, then we had to you brought your pajamas down and draped them over a chair before you went to bed. And if you were smart, you planned your clothes for the next day and brought those down so that you'd have warm clothes to put on in the morning.
In a few years after we moved here, we were on strike for about 18 weeks with the phone company. And Gass, the restoration expert of Old Deerfield, I went over and talked to him. And he offered me a job during the strike, and I worked for him for about 15 weeks. And I learned a lot about restoration working for him because he was a major restorer of Old Deerfield. So I learned a lot from him for the short time I worked for him. For me, well, the last one, I think, was the foundation of this house, because the foundation of the house was native stone, and it was laid up dry with no mortar. I found a lot of broken china and parts of lanterns and lights, things like that. I think I still have them in a box somewhere. And the kids say, "Well, you want all that junk parts?" I said, "Well, this is part of the excavation of the house that I found this stuff, and to me it means something, but maybe to anybody else it wouldn't mean anything. You know, it's part of the history of the house."
So I just remember there being a constant project. If it wasn't in one room, then they moved to another room, and there was always a project going on. So I don't ever remember when there wasn't something going on here. I think it definitely, this is what I remember growing up. So it definitely made me entertain the thought of having an older house too. My husband is a builder, so we ended up doing a post and beam, like a reproduction cape with an L. So yeah, it definitely influenced me as far as the kind of house I want to live in. Just a little more modern though.
I love the old house and antiques. It definitely put the antique bug in me. They used to go to auctions all the time, and I used to tag along with them often, and I definitely got the antique bug. The houses that I've had, I've leaned more towards older houses, not brand new ones. I just don't like the aesthetics of the new stuff. So
the Graves family built it, and the relations of the Graves people lived here. They didn't live here. They owned it, but they rented it out. So it's been in the Graves family for a pretty long time.
I think it was.
I mean, it's not the Graves, not all the time the Graves name, but the Graves related to the Graves people. I found a gravestone down cellar, a descendant of the owner of the house.
we were freaked out. We didn't want to go down cellar because we thought the body was down there, not just the gravestone.
Are you sure about that?
No. But they did put down a cement floor, so I think if they went in digging out for that, I think they would have found it if she was down there.
Didn't someone tell you that they replaced, that was the original gravestone? The woman had died when she was 58 years old,
Yeah.
in like 1836 or something?
Yeah,
They replaced it and they put that original, somehow it ended up in the cellar.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I remember them being surprised at was the amount of the original paneling that was still in the house. And that was one of the ways that Bill Gass was able to date it, wasn't it, with the feather edge paneling?
And the nails. The hand-wrought nails.
Like in the living room, the baseboard is painted red, and it's just the bottom board on the wall. That was kind of cool. There's all kinds of neat stuff.
I've been through the 1718 house years ago, and I found out that one room in the southwest corner of the house was the original room, because I found paneling in one room. It was built as a one-room house. and the paneling shows that up in it. And I don't know if I told Gaston if he ever went in to see it. I don't remember if he did or not, but it was my conclusion that that was probably, the one-room house was probably older than this house. That were nailed to in this house, they were all handmade. And you can tell they're all handmade because hardly one of them is the same. It's had the same head and the same tapered edges and all that. And I still have a lot of those. This fireplace was added. This wasn't one of the, well, it was 18th century, but it was added after the main house was built. The main house was built for the main fireplace, which did all the cooking, and in the winter they practically lived in one room because the fire was going all the time. And the small fireplace in the north room, that was the formal room. But the living in 18th century homes was all done in one room, and it was called the keeping room. Oh, we rebuilt everything. I had to put a concrete base to build the fireplaces on because because it didn't have heat here, and they only used it in the summertime. Yeah. But after that, after this was built and all that, they added the kitchen out here, and there was a chimney and it wasn't a fireplace. It was a place where this brass bucket
there.
They had a chimney there, and they built fires underneath that. I don't know if it was for laundry or it was for cooking. I don't know. But years ago, they boiled the laundry. They had that's why you find these big brass buckets like what's here. Yeah. I found newspapers under wallpapers that I stripped off. Newspapers for did we just find some? Yeah, some newspapers and all. Yeah.
And you found wallpaper. Wasn't there wallpaper up there that there was a wallpaper company that specialized in old-time wallpaper?
Yeah.
Tell that story.
Yeah. And I had watercolored wallpaper I found under paneling and stuff like that. And I contacted an antique wallpaper reproduction company, and I told them about it, and they told me, I sent pieces down to them, and they were overjoyed with it, and they told me that I could have a room enough to do a room in reproduction antique paper. Did I ever get any antique paper?
Yeah, you put it in the dorm room.
Well, maybe I did. I don't remember putting the paper on.
Yeah, because the way that the house was arranged, my Debbie and I had the front room, Cindy had this room, and the rooms up here, there were two rooms divided up. And my folks were in the big one, and John, who's the youngest, was in the back room. I came home from college one year, and this had been made into a dorm room. They had taken down the wall between the two rooms. They moved into the front room, which has virgin paneling on it, was never covered over, and the three of us girls were back together like we were in Pittsfield, all in one room. They didn't tell me. That was a surprise coming back to find that. But that's where the wallpaper ended up, and it's still up there.
I can't imagine growing up anywhere but here. We had a great family. I think we all feel like we had a great childhood. My mother loved flowers. She had a beautiful rock garden, stones from here. I remember my brother and I crawling into the two Dutch ovens in the living room. It was just all the projects. I remember when we first moved in here, there was one bathroom, and up until like a couple years ago, there was only one bathroom. So the 6 of us were, and it was one of those bear claw tubs.
Yeah, it was in
No
there.
shower. It took a while, but I think they took away what used to be the pantry and made a bathroom in there with an actual shower and stuff. So we were limited to pretty short showers, I remember, when we were all trying to get ready for school and stuff like that. It was a whole different way of life, and I remember my parents always had open door policy, so I know my brother's friends from college lived here, so it was, it was a happy upbringing.
What about you, Kathy?
Yeah, I remember just helping with projects, I love doing that. I remember when Dad was trying to find bricks for the chimney project, he had a little Chevy step-side red pickup, and that he would go around and try to find these old cellar holes where the old bricks were, and then find out who owned them. And then I remember going out with him a few times, Debbie and I, and loading the bricks in the back of the truck, bringing them home, and then he gave us each a wire brush and said, "Okay, clean the mortar off." And we'd sit out there doing that. So we were definitely involved in the projects, and these rooms are big enough, big family parties. There was always
In our kitchen, remember our kitchen table was a picnic table, a huge picnic table. That was what we ate on for so long, because there was just always projects going on. It kind of was like a big camp out every day, very casual. Like, I remember our friends loved coming here. Like, there was the big mystery of the
old
gravestone downstairs, and nobody had a house like this, so it was pretty cool.
And the only time I was allowed to skip school was when he needed to dig out under the house to put in the vents for the forced hot air. And using our little red wagon, I think he was under there, he'd shovel, and I'd haul, he'd crawling and pulling the wagon out to dump it. So yeah, it was fun having that time together working.
I remember going by, now that you bring up the stone, the brick thing, I remember going by and watching you do the...
Yeah, funny. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm.
Oh, they must have really been bad.
With my experience with gas, it taught me a lot of things on restoration. Even though half the time working for gas, he had me underneath a building, throwing out the dirt under there because they were going to put a cellar in, and that was my first job working for gas, and I thought that I'd do some real restoration work, but he had me digging cellar holes.
I remember when we first moved in, it was a gas stove, and Mom was really emphatic. She was terrified of gas, had never used that, and that was one of the first things that went, when they rewired and, did everything. The gas left, and she got an electric stove. She was fine with not having a dishwasher, there are no cabinets in the kitchen. There's just these tall stand-up cupboards, antique cupboards, and she loved it. She was definitely a homebody and was always baking and cooking, and she was in her glory. This was her thing. She was
This was the countertop. This was the counter space.
This was our island. When we eventually got a real table, this table, which actually, if you go like this and flip it over, is a bench with storage underneath. But yeah, I remember her always busy in here, and didn't bother her.
Didn't seem to be an issue.
Right, and we were her dishwashers. I remember we started very early. We had a tall stool. I don't know if we still have it. I remember, so we could reach the sink. And as kids, we would be sitting in front of the sink washing dishes in the dish pan for six of us. It was just what we did. It was just...
Yeah, we say, "Dad, why can't we get a dishwasher? Why should I get a dishwasher? I've got 4 of them."
Right. Remember, Mom loved Christmas. We had the best Christmases. We had the big tree in there. We had the fireplace going. It was magical. It couldn't have been better.
Yeah, especially in an old house like this, to have an old fireplace, and
So what he didn't talk about is finding the piano. You want to talk about that?
I forgot
That upright piano?
No, it wasn't upright. Was it upright?
Yeah.
Well, the name of it.
Wasn't it an upright one?
The name of the piano, I forgot what it was, but I advertised in the Antique magazine. And somebody down south jumped on it and brought a truck up and bought, I forgot how much I got for 40.
Yeah, but where was it?
Huh?
Where did you find it?
It was in the place where the central chimney was, in the hole there.
So there was a closet door, there was a cupboard door in here. We ended up going in through that door that led into this area in the center there where there were two small chimneys instead of this big one. There were pictures in the Sunderland historical things that there was a picture of the house with the big central chimney, right?
Yeah.
So we knew that something had happened and the old one had fallen down. So we're like, how the heck does somebody get something as big as that in there? It was like crazy.
That's how
A
it
lot
was.
of things up there.
There's still like a chaise lounge old couch up there.
Yeah.
It had hay, was it hay stuffed in the...
Yeah, but that evidently, it's been up there ever since I lived here, and it would be difficult to get it down. The only way I thought I could get it down, I'd have to take the window out and throw it out.
The stairs going up there are really steep. They're like this.
Because that's the top attic. There's two attics. So that's the very top. That's the third
And
floor.
there's a back stairway here, so when we were kids and came in a little too late, our bedroom was right up there, so we could, like they couldn't hear the creaky stairs and all that, but, and it wasn't there one of the stair
Panels,
treads
so we could crawl
you
underneath.
pulled out, and somebody was saying that might have been a place where they hid slaves or whatever. Who knows, the stories that go along. The old summer kitchen, I think it was the old summer kitchen was attached to the garage, and if you went up to the second floor, there was a door that opened up into the garage, and there was no stairs or anything there, and I used to sleepwalk in in Pittsfield, and I remember them telling me a story. Didn't somebody, one of the uncles or something, walked in asleep and opened the door and stepped out there and killed himself or something?
I don't know, killed himself, but...
Well, that was the end of my sleepwalking. that just totally freaked me out.
I think it was just the fact that there was this gravestone down cellar, and it was just the weirdest thing to know there's a gravestone. We always kind of thought, like, is there a body down there too? So, that was kind of, But everything creaked in here, so I mean, if the wind blew, the house would kind of make noises. If you could never sneak around here anywhere, if you're
Floors squeak.
because the floors were all squeaky, the old wooden pine floors, and
When tractor trailer trucks would go by, the whole house would rattle. Our bedroom was up front, and it's like, what's that? It was like a train was coming through.
Mm-hmm.
You got used to it though. Ooh, tough one.
we're sitting right here. So.
You could say 50-50, that'd be okay.
Well, it's hard for me to think about moving out of my house. Where the house in Pittsfield, is, go by, but this, I spent a lot of time in this house, a lot of time working at it hard for the first 10 years and probably the first 20 years. I didn't get into any trouble or anything like that. I can't remember anything that I got into. No, I won't tell you about that.
That's good. We're sitting here. No, don't go there, Dad.
And you're still recording, right, Betty? And your father and mother's adventure into Sunderland.
Anybody going to say anything about?
I get emotional about it.
That's fine. That's
Well, kids never complained about moving here. It was all new to them. And it wasn't like being in the city where there's schools were loaded with kids and all that. However, we were in a neighborhood that had kids, or kids their age. And I thought that when we moved here, there were going to be kids here. But when we moved here, there were kids here, but they were working on the farm.
Had opportunities here that we never would have had, living in a new house in Pittsfield. I think we got a good work ethic.
I was just going to say, I think we all have a really strong work ethic because we went to either pick cucumbers or tobacco, or we were working by the time we were in 7th grade, and it was just the expectation. You jumped on your bike, you rode to Whately or wherever farm you were working on and picked cucumbers, and worked long days, and I think it made us appreciate things. I think we all appreciate the little things, and we appreciate how lucky we were to have such great parents with good values. And I think we all have generous hearts and appreciation for all the little things in life, just because that's the way we were brought up. My mother and my dad loved, this was their life. They loved filling the house with kids and grandkids and our friends, and the door was always open, and they were really welcoming.
And buying antiques that they said were investments, so that when we went to college, they 10 years later, the value would increase and they'd sell it, and that would help pay for us for school. That never happened. All those lovely pieces are still here, which is awesome. And my father was very creative. Like the hutch that's behind you started out as a cupboard like this, and he cut it down and turned it into a nice hutch. It's just, and we were allowed to participate in all that stuff. So it was just.
Mom learned how to make braided rugs. We had braided rugs. She did the arm painting.
The arm painting, the toll painting. She developed a lot of crafts and handiwork that people used to do back in the old time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's tough for me to leave a house that I spent over 50 years of my life in, a house that I put a lot of work into, and I appreciate everything that was done here. I appreciate my family helping out whenever they could in the work around here, and I just wish my wife could still be here to take into the appreciation that the kids have found, have given us over the years in doing work, historical work in this place too, The modern folks nowadays, they want the modern things. They say it's beautiful and all that, but I said, well, would you like to live here? Well, we'd have to think about that part of it. But I'm still happy with this house, and we don't have the modern, ultra modern things in the house, but we survived with the regular things that were modern 50 years ago.